Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of APUSH History. I am your host, Langella Sensei. So guys, last time we were here, we were really talking about the encomienda system. We were talking about the interaction between the Spanish and the native groups in which they had taken over in the Americas and the New World. And really, I focused on a lot about the kind of the spread of Christianity and how that kind of caused a lot of problems, right? We talked about the mission system in which instead of using soldiers, they had used priests to kind of convert these the natives of the area. And then on top of that, they're using the encomienda system to try to basically force natives to work into these massive plantations, also to try to mine for gold and silver. And obviously the Meta system, which had focused on basically giving colonists the ability to control an area as long as they protect the natives that they are responsible for. Okay, and as on top of that, the fact that they had to create a caste system that would actually kind of divide the power of not only those that were from Spain, but those that they had intermingled with, as in the natives and also African descendant slaves that they had brought over for labor. Okay, and then we kind of finished off with talking about the tensions rising to the level where we started to see a lot more revolts, a lot more uprisings between the natives and the Spaniards that had taken them over. And we finished the class off with a debate of how they are treating the natives between major groups of Spain. So first, before we get into the last section, I want to go over the worksheet that we did yesterday. Talk about some of the things that I saw. Okay, so let's take a look. Let me just get my pen ready here. All right, here we go. So the reading is not too complicated, right? One of the most important thing to understand is that these two accounts are completely different, right? So when you get to the bottom here, you see really a very I really like the HAP system because it helps you kind of break down information and kind of set you up to be able to really look in depth at these different documents. So let's take a look first at the De las Casas document. All right, so because De las Casas comes first, so let's first focus on that one. So when it comes to how they treated or how he believed that natives should be treated, he really focused on the fact that they should have freedoms, right? And the biggest thing that we see in his document was that since they are Christians, that they should be treated as equal as they are due to their faith, right? And the fact is that if they weren't Christian, then it'd be okay. Then their treatment of being, treated horribly would be understandable. But the fact that they are Christians, it means that they should be treated better and they should have the same freedoms as those that are from Spain. Okay, then let's take a look at the historical context, right? Some of the major things you need to focus on: the encomienda system, right? You have to know that there's a system that's taking place that is forcing natives to work in these large plantations. And on top of that, you should know about the Meta system that basically says that the colonist that controls the area has to take care of the natives of that area. You should also know about the colonization of the Spanish in the New World. You should also know that they used the mission system, where basically they were now trying to convert natives to Christianity rather than just killing them all or conquering them. And you should know about the previous events as the conquistadors. Now, some other things you can look at. Usually whenever you are looking at historical context, the best thing to look at is this area, usually on the top of a source. And what this does is gives you a little bit of a background of the person themselves. And so when you really take a look at this beginning here, one of the things that sticks out to me was he was recognized as being the protector of the Indians, okay? And he had been in the colonies and saw this firsthand. That's probably one of the biggest things that I take away from this, is that he saw the actions firsthand. And that's why, he kind of he's more sensitive toward this topic because he was there firsthand and saw this. Now let's take a look at an intended audience. He obviously wanted to try to convince the Spanish government and also the people to kind of look at this and say, the way we're treating the natives is pretty horrible, and there's no reason for it. And it's very a persuasive argument. So that's why the intended audience would be the Spanish government to try to convince them, and also the people of Spain themselves. Okay, you take a look at the purpose, as I already mentioned, it's to convince the Spanish government to end the encomienda system and the persecution, not really persecution, but the hierarchy that's created that is putting down the native groups and putting the Spanish above them as a higher being. Okay, so that's important to understand. And lastly, the point of view. Obviously, he's a Christian missionary, right? I think usually we would have these split because I think purpose is supposed to go last, but for some reason its point of view is last. But the point of view is that he is a Christian missionary, right? He has been there firsthand. He's seen the unspeakable acts done, like personally. So he has his own belief about this. So obviously it really sticks with him. So now let's take a look at Sepulveda. Now Sepulveda's argument is he sees them as being barbarians, as being animals, uncivilized. The fact is that the introduction of Christianity actually helps them, right? That it's almost like they're doing this for their benefit, not necessarily for Spain's benefit. It's really for the benefit of the natives themselves, and without them, they would just go and kill each other, right? And that's kind of messed up. But let's take a look at the historical context. A lot of the same things you can say for the other side, but one of the most important things I would suggest is to take a look at the top here, right? One of the things that sticks out to me has to be that he was seen as a Renaissance man. He was studying in Italy. He was a philosopher. He was a historian. He had learned a lot of different things from scholars within Italy. So when he came back to Spain, he had really a kind of a strict feeling towards the natives, because he wasn't there. He was not a first-hand account of these things. So he's just hearing about them. So this would be a second-hand account. All right, so that's the important thing. It's a second-hand account of all these incidents. So all he hears about is the treatment, and generally when you look at it, he's trying to say that these people were not civilized, and that because of Christianity they became civilized, right? And that's what is really important. That he has this kind of feeling, this idea toward them. That they are not civilized unless they're Christian. So that's why I would put that historical context here, right? Because of the fact that it was secondhand information. He was never there, so he doesn't necessarily know how bad the treatment really is. And on top of that, he was learning in Italy about really all these different ideas about Christianity, how great it is, so that he kind of uses Christianity as a way of saying that it would help these people. Okay, the intended audience, it's really for the Spanish government as well, just like De las Casas was, but it was there to really defend the treatment and also kind of to go after De las Casas as well. The purpose is to kind of make a rationale to explain that this labor that they're forcing them to do was beneficial to them as well, because it would help them gain a connection to Christ, and also it would help the Spanish. And it was almost like the idea that if they weren't going to do it, then who would do it, right? Point of view. This is kind of important. He was a Spanish Christian, a supporter of social Darwinism, kind of the idea of the survival of the fittest, and also, as I already mentioned, he's a Renaissance man. He is not necessarily a person that sympathizes with natives, because he wasn't actually there seeing these things for himself, right? So he's kind of saying maybe these people are overreacting. Maybe they're just making a big deal out of nothing. Okay? So good. So now we take a look at the arguments being made. So the arguments are generally, in your opinion, when you look at De las Casas, he really talks about how this is a immoral action, and lists all the different reasons why it's immoral, especially for the amount of food that they are given, the amount of hours of work they have, and the fact that they are Christians and we're still treating them this badly. Then you take a look at Sepulveda, and he basically says that they are not Spanish, right? They are not really Christian. These are the treatment that they are getting is only, is better than what they're doing to themselves, as in they're killing each other. And when we showed up, now they're not killing each other, they're working, and they become Christian. So what is a negative to that standpoint? Okay? Good. So let's look at the final parts. So for number one, the concerns expressed by authors or a reaction to the treatment of natives, of the native population. Number two, which of the following developments from 1492 to 1607 was De las Casas most directly responding to? It is D, right? The immortality that colonization facilitates. And then number three, the ideas expressed by D. Spelvita most directly reflect which of the following continuities in United States history? Is it C? Yes, it is. Native American practices were subordinate to European practices. Okay? So with that being said, that's good for this part. Let's go back to the PowerPoint and let's finish this bad boy up. All right, so we are basically at the end of period one, which is, congratulations, we are almost done, right? That is a big deal. So when you take a look at the next part, so I have these videos here for you guys just in case, but like I said, you should review them on your own, but we'll probably watch these another day. So now let's take a look at the French colonies. We're going to focus on the English colonies in the next period. So the French colonies are pretty simple and straightforward. When we take a look at the territory they had, mainly they end up taking over majority, almost all of Canada, okay? And they do take control over parts of the Ohio River Valley as well. They do gain more territory, but however, they do lose some to the Spanish, right? But when they do control majority of Canada, right, they really prosper in what is the fur trade. And I mentioned this in the lesson, in yesterday's lesson, that the fur trade in North America was extremely profitable. Now, the fur trade was focused around usually beavers or even other animals, and it was very rare. So the fact is, when they were controlling the area, they were dominating the fur trade. And the reason why they were dominating the fur trade was because instead of really enslaving the Native Americans, they actually made peace with them. They actually worked together. They tried to make them citizens. They actually intermarried with Native Americans, which ended up making more kind of a diverse life, really a diverse culture of that area. There was some success in converting natives, but for the most part, we really have to understand that the way the French had treated the natives at that time period was completely different than how other countries had treated the Native Americans. Okay, so when you take a look at the interaction with different cultures, right? I kind of separate into a few different dots here, right? European nations in the New World were different than how than France had done. Usually, Spain and France did have intermarriage, but England was like completely different. They did not want to intermarry. So that is where you can compare all the different ones. And you guys did the activity where you did make that Venn diagram or that chart, and you can tell that when Spain was doing intermarriage, they were doing it to gain access to the fur trade. The French were doing it literally to have access to the fur trade, but also making them citizens of France as well. As in, there was a complete difference in how Spain did it. They really just separated everybody by class, making that caste system. And France really didn't even care about that, some sort of a system. They wanted to make everyone citizens and kind of be on the same level, right? The British, rather than having intermarriage, they rather have had really people from the mother country come and basically man these different colonies. So that's why there's a big difference between the three. So remember, France and Spain were a little bit better interaction with the native. I think France had probably the best interaction, and England basically had forced them off their land, all right, and was trying to bring more people from England to dominate the colonies rather than have the natives of the area do that, right? Yeah, so that's the important aspect for this little slide here. Now, when it comes to the differences between the French and British colonies, New France was a lot bigger of a territory. New France was Canada, but the population was not even close to the British colonies. Okay. And the reason why for this was because New France was focused more on developing trade and exploiting the land, the access to the resources of the area, while the British were trying to bring as many people to the colonies as possible to basically set up we'll talk about this later on, a system of mercantilism, right? Mercantilism is the idea where you have the colonies produce natural resources, right, that are sent to the mother country, and that mother country then manufactures good with those resources and then sells it back to the colonies. So they cared more about developing mercantilism and having more people that were British descent in those areas, rather than having a intermarriage and intermingling with native groups and making peace with them, right? And that's why the French had more stronger alliances with the Indians, and that's what kind of leads to part of the French and Indian War, was because the French had a connection with Native Americans of the area, and we'll get to more of that later on. But that does lead to some problems down the line. Okay. With that being said, we are finished with period 1 officially. Now, I do have some things for you guys to do. This is not just a one and done type of deal. First off, I have some review videos here, but I actually created a worksheet to help you guys review some of the stuff that will be important to understand for this first unit. So let's get to that. So I created this causation period 1 worksheet. So what this does, causation, guys, remember, is the idea of cause and effect, right? Cause and effect and causation. Just help you guys remember. And the point of the worksheet is basically for you to look at a summary of everything that's happened through period 1, and you're supposed to try to think of ways in which you can kind of look at the long-term effects, okay? Now, the link here sends you to a Heimler's history, everything you need to know about period 1, right? It creates a nice little review guide here for you. What I did was I created almost a very similar way of Edpuzzle. Now, the reason why I didn't make an Edpuzzle itself was because some reason Edpuzzle doesn't work with our laptops. So I wanted to create basically our own version. So the way the worksheet works is there's a question here, right? At the very end, I have a time slot. Now, that time slot tells you that generally at 55 seconds in, you should be answering this question, okay? And it's the same thing happens for each one. So at 1 minute, 49 seconds, this question should be answered. At 3 minutes, 46 seconds, this question should be answered. And you do that for all of these. There's 10 questions. So you'll be watching this video. You click on this large title, or you would click on the link itself. And it should send you to that YouTube page, right? The YouTube video. All right. So with that being said, guys, we are technically finished with period 1. We are done. That is a nice go ahead. We made it. We finally got through the first period. Now we're gonna get to the real interesting stuff. We got the English colonies coming in, and it's gonna be real interesting. All right, so that's it for me, guys. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'm always here to help. All right, guys, Langella out.